I inserted one disk into the computer and started it up. There were 4 files on the disk. I started the one with the previous Wednesday's date on it. It showed Dana walking into a cheap motel with a very tall guy. I could barely make out who he was. Then, in the room, I saw them getting close. It was Chuck Connor, the guy she worked with. I watched long enough to make sure they weren't playing cards, then I turned off the disc. I think some guys would want to watch it in its entirety. Even sicker guys would probably want to watch it multiple times and maybe even jerk off to it. And I just felt like throwing up. Gee, I was right, of course. As bad as it was to think about her cheating on me, it was much worse to see it, especially when I saw some of the things she'd let him do to her that she'd never let me think about.
"Daddy," Sasha, my daughter, exclaimed, "you must come to school tomorrow to meet my new teacher." Curiously, I inquired, "What happened to Mrs. Greendale, your former teacher?" "Her husband suffered a heart attack, so she needs to take care of him for the remainder of the school year," Sasha explained. I had a liking for Mrs. Greendale. She upheld traditional teaching values, none of that modern parent-blaming nonsense. I only had to show up at the school if Sasha did something foolish. "Can't your mom handle meeting the teacher at the PTA gathering?" I proposed. "I'd prefer if you met her. Mom's been acting oddly lately," Sasha confessed. "All right, Angel. I'll make an effort to attend, though I can't promise," I assured. "Teacher meetings seem to fall under your mom's domain." "My name is Lucas McCain, a representative at Dellon International, age 35, soon to be 50. I stand at 5 feet tall, with brown hair and eyes. Maintaining good physical shape, thanks to daily jogging, I cherish my wife and daughter above all else. Dana, my wife, was instrumental in PTA affairs, or whatever the modern equivalent may be. Dana, claiming to be 5 feet tall, was actually 4 feet 11 inches, slender with an appealing figure. Our marriage spanned 14 years, and for the last decade, we lavished attention on our daughter. We had 8 more years until Sasha departed for college. However, Sasha's observation about Dana's recent behavior was accurate. The last time she acted this way was during her pregnancy with Sasha, meticulously planning for the impending arrival. My lack of interest in children likely contributed to this, but from the moment Sasha was born, from the instant I cut her umbilical cord and witnessed her first cry, she became Daddy's little girl. Dana arrived a little later and headed straight for the shower. She had been doing that a lot lately, maybe once or twice a week. I didn't think anything of it because women always take baths and showers much more often than guys. Looking back now, I think I was stupid, or at least ignorant, but let's face it, most of us are. We get married because we love the other person so much that we want them to be a permanent part of our lives. Part of that love is the fact that we trust them in several ways. We trust that they will not hurt us. We trust that they will be faithful to us. We just don't expect the person we promise to spend the rest of our lives with to stab us in the back. Let's face it, love makes us ignorant. If you're constantly looking over your shoulder expecting the apple of your eye to cheat on you, then your relationship sucks. Kick that to the curb right now, trust me. If you can't let your guard down around her, then you don't truly love her. I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking, if my old lady was running after me, I'd know about it. When that happens to you, trust me, you'll be as clueless as me, but maybe not as lucky. Anyway, the next day I showed up at Sasha's school just in time to pick her up. The only thing it took for me to pick her up was to pick my jaw off the floor. The woman standing in front of Sasha's class was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She was wearing jeans and a nice blouse. When I entered the room, she had her back turned to me. When she turned to face me, I was mesmerized by her smile and the volume of red hair that cascaded down her shoulders. Her figure wasn't as good as my wife's, but who cared? I sat looking at her for a long time until I realized she was addressing me. They just didn't make teachers like this in my childhood. She was tall, at least for a woman. She was about 5 feet 8 inches tall, and she was much slimmer than Dana, not that I was comparing them, but she was stunning. Yes, that's a good word for her, stunning. Dad. Sasha called out. Miss Marshall is talking to you. Oh, I'm sorry, I stammered. I'm just, brainwashed by Sasha's dad, Mr. McCain. Lucas McCain, but you can just call me Luke. I held out my hand, and she shook it warmly and gave me another of her smiles. Damn it, she must sell those smiles. I apologize for calling you out on such short notice, she said, smiling again. I'm new here, but the school takes parental involvement very seriously. Sasha is probably one of my brightest and friendliest students. She's also one of the most responsive. She had a soft southern accent that seemed to stretch each syllable for several. I could probably listen to this woman forever. I smiled at Sasha. I was proud of her. She smiled back, holding out her hand. I high-fived her and slapped her hand sharply. Daddy, when someone holds out their hand, you have to put money in it, she whined. In any case, Miss Marshall continued, neither you nor your wife participated in any of our projects or committees this year. Miss Marshall, please call me Diana, she said. Doesn't the PTA count? I asked. Yes, of course, she smiled. Are you on the PTA? Well, no, I said, but my wife does. She attends all these meetings on Wednesdays, she's never missed one. Miss Marshall's face changed before my eyes. Maybe I'm wrong, she said, but the PTA meets on Tuesdays and only on the third Tuesday of every month. My face went down too. I had to find out what was going on with Dana. Why don't you pick one of our committees or clubs to get involved in, she said. And if your wife ends up on the PTA, you'll be protected. She said all this with a lot of sympathy in her voice. It was as if she knew what I was going through. I looked over the list of events and settled on track. Here is your corrected text. I think I could help with that, I said. I'm no expert, but I run every day and have done a few marathons. That would be perfect, she said. They meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 o'clock. On the way home, Sasha and I stopped at McDonald's. It wasn't a very nutritious dinner, but she loves it, and I wouldn't have to cook. I knew Dana had no chance of getting ahead of us, even though she left work before I did. Some guys like to sit in their favorite chairs and think, while others like to take long walks. My favorite activity for thinking was washing my red Mustang GT. After rinsing the car, I began to put my thoughts on Dana's behavior in order. I knew that parent-teacher conferences were only once a month, not every week. Dana joined the PTA almost 2 months ago. That meant that everything she had done about 6 or 8 times. While I was washing my car, I called my friend. Hey, Hop, I said into the phone. Hey, Luke, what's up? He asked. He laughed. Remember when you thought Tio was cheating on you? What was the name of the agency you used? Oh God, don't remind me of that, he laughed. All I've done is make a few lawyers and a few private investigators richer. Well, I told you she wasn't cheating on you, I said. She took classes at the community college because she thought you were embarrassed by her accent and limited English. Yeah, I remember, he laughed. Anyway, the agency was called Ponderosa Investigations. They're in the book, and they're good. Thanks, Hop, I said and hung up. I had known Hop Singh since the days when we played baseball. I called the information desk and was given the number for Ponderosa Investigations. I called them and was told they would be there in a few minutes, as they were very close to my house. I was polishing my Helos chrome rims when a car pulled up. I saw the man who got out of the car pull out a pair of sunglasses and put them on. Your chrome is so bright, I thought I was going to go blind, he said. My father had a 1973 Boss, and he took care of it just like you did this car, I nodded. I liked old Mustangs too. I'm Lucas McCain, I said, extending my hand. My friends call me Luke. I'm Joseph Cartwright, he replied. His handshake was firm, and I believed him. He didn't look like the usual tall private investigator. In fact, he was only 5 feet 4 inches tall. My friends call me Little Joe. I realized where the name came from. Why don't we go inside and talk? I said. On the way to the house, I explained my suspicions to him. He looked around the house and told me about the packages they had. He ended up putting a recording device on his phone. I gave him her cell phone number, and since I was paying the bill, he told me that they would be able to track those calls as well. He then installed several tiny cameras throughout the house. I had the choice of watching the camera footage myself or ordering a weekly or daily DVD. I chose the cheaper option, the weekly DVD. How much will it cost? I asked him. How much are you willing to pay for peace of mind? He replied. That told me it was going to be pretty damn expensive. In the end, one way or another, you'll decide it was worth it, he smiled. Okay, explain to me what it is, I said. If she's not cheating, you'll be able to forget about all those nasty suspicions, he said. You'll be able to trust her again and work on making your marriage stronger. All the stress this has put on you will be over, and you'll be able to relax, he exhaled, letting it all go. I realized what he was getting at. On the other hand, if she's cheating, you won't only find out about it, you'll have all the evidence you need to confront her or even divorce her if necessary, he said. That way, no one will be able to make a fool of you by telling you about some scrappy affair that lasted years. You'll be able to move on with your life one way or another. We'll be in touch, he said, pulling away. I went back to polishing the car. About a half hour after he left, Dana came home. She was cheerful and came over to sit with me and watch me work. This was something new. Dana, I don't like anyone looking over my shoulder while I'm working, I said. You're not doing anything wrong, it's me. It just gets on my nerves, she said. Okay, honey, I'll see you when you get here, she said. After I came in from the car wash, Dana sat next to me while I watched TV. She was suddenly so damn friendly. I got up and went into the shower. When I got out of the shower, she was still there. I sat down in the chair instead of on the couch. I'm going to bed, she said. Going to bed? I'll be there soon. I just want to watch the news, I said. I pretended to fall asleep on the couch. When she came in, ostensibly to wake me up and send me to bed, I just rolled over. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual. I got ready for work and grabbed a cup of coffee. Dana and Sasha were just piling into the kitchen as I was leaving. I kissed my daughter goodbye, and Dana looked in the refrigerator. By the time she realized I was leaving, the door had already closed. She called me at work that morning. Hey, you left without saying goodbye to me this morning, she said. What did I do? What do you mean, Dana? I asked. We've been married for 14 years and together for 16. If we're not mad at each other, you kiss me goodbye every morning and tell me you love me. Sometimes you do that to melt the ice when we're mad at each other. I know it sounds silly to you, but it helps me start the day off right when I leave the house every morning. It makes me feel good to know that someone loves me. It makes me feel special. I'm sorry, Dana. I'll try not to forget that, I said. What happened to you last night? She asked. What do you mean, Dana? I asked. Well, I was excited, she said. I just let it go. I had the good sense not to say the first thing that came into my head. If I had said, I'm sure whoever you're having fun with will appreciate it, that would only let her know that I had her figured out. Since I didn't have proof yet, I saw no reason to stir up what may not have been a problem. I was taking Hop Singh's lesson to heart. Oh, I wanted to remind you that I have, she began. I know you have a parent-teacher conference today, Dana, I said coldly. I'll talk to you later at work. I hung up the phone. Screw the Hop Singh class, I thought. There's no way I'm going to stand by and let this continue. Once I have proof, I want to act fast. I called Hop again. Hey Hop, who was the lawyer your aunt used for the divorce? I asked. I don't remember, he said. I can give you the number of the guy I was going to use, he continued. Hell no, I snapped back. He was too damn friendly. I remember him going on and on about how all this sitting around and discussing was. He talked about being reasonable and sharing all this crap about shared decision-making and maturity. Just blows my mind. I need that lawyer your aunt had who got your uncle off the hook. Okay, calm down, Luke. I'll call her right now and get the number. Are you even sure something's going on? He asked. Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, I said. Okay, I'll call you back, he said and hung up. For the next few minutes, I was actually doing work. I was processing orders for several customers and organizing the delivery of the goods they needed overseas when the phone rang. I picked it up on the first ring. Her name is Ann Wilson, Hop said. She works at the Hart Agency. From what I hear, she's the meanest divorce attorney in the state. They call her the Barracuda. Are you sure you want to? Thanks, Hop, I said, then I hung up. I called the information desk and got a listing for the Hart Agency. I asked the person who answered if I could speak to Ann Wilson. The phone rang again as my call was transferred. What do you want? The voice in the receiver was so loud and angry that it scared me. I'm looking for Ann Wilson, I said politely. Excuse me, it's her, said an almost melodic female voice. I'm sorry, I thought you were my ex-husband, she said. He's been calling me early in the morning lately just to mess with me. I found my lawyer, I was sure of it. For two reasons. First, from the sound of her voice, I was sure this woman's balls were scraping the ground as she went. I knew she wouldn't take a single prisoner, and that was what I wanted. Secondly, she was divorced, so I was sure she could understand the rage and pain that a hard breakup could cause. I'd like you to represent me in my divorce, I said. I'm sorry, I don't think so, she said. Lately, because of my reputation, I've been getting a lot of calls from men who want me to represent them so their wives don't hire me. In my opinion, if you cheated on her, you deserve what's coming your way. If you guys would just think about something with a brain in your head for once, the world would be a better place. Can you get off your soapbox and wait for me to explain this to you? I asked sharply. First of all, I've never cheated on my wife in all the time we've been together. She's the one cheating on me. And she's not only cheating on me, she's cheating on our beautiful little daughter. I've been feeling like a single dad for months now, and I finally found out why. I don't have any proof yet, but I have a private investigator working on it. I want to act quickly to get this sorted out over the summer and lessen the problems for my daughter. I'm so sorry, she said. Her whole demeanor had changed. We made an appointment later that day to discuss the details and hung up. For the rest of the workday, I tried to focus on work, but I kept getting distracted. I kept trying to figure out what had gone wrong. For a few seconds, I needed my hands and thought about where I had failed her. Then I sobered up and started trying to figure out how stupid she had to be to cheat on me. Shortly before 3 in the afternoon, my phone rang. I answered it. A soft and sultry voice with a hint of a southern accent instantly brought back memories. I hope it's okay that I'm calling you, she said. I just wanted to remind you that our first little meeting is tomorrow afternoon. I was lost in that voice again, I said. Okay. I said, go ahead and remind me, that elicited a laugh from her. Even her laughter was cute and funny. The kids will get there around 5, she said. We have to be there a little earlier. Where's something you can run in? Tomorrow we'll probably just do a slow, easy group jog. Bye. All my thoughts of Dana were gone when John said goodbye. The word meant much more than just goodbye. There was a hint of playfulness in it, and even a bit of I don't want to stop hanging out with you. It also made me wonder if she just meant bye. I was sure I was just imagining it, though. I picked Sasha up from school, and we drove home. We played Little Big Planet together on our PlayStation 3 for a few hours. I cooked grilled steaks and a small salad for us. After dinner, Sasha went to her room to do her homework and talk to one of her friends. I, on the other hand, went to the computer to look up new stuff for my Mustang on some of my favorite parts websites. After convincing myself that my car really needed a chin spoiler, I went back to the PS3 and started watching the Blu-ray disc of Iron Man 2. I turned the volume up enough that I didn't hear Dana when she walked in. She wrapped her arms around me and tried to kiss me. I stood up quickly, as if she'd startled me, and moved away from her. "That will serve you well," she laughed. "You know you shouldn't turn the surround sound up that loud. How will Sasha sleep?" "Excuse me," I said, turning back to the TV. "Wait a minute," she said. "What smells so good? Did you fry something?" "Just steaks for me and Sasha," I replied. "We didn't think you'd want to eat when you got here. You usually shower right away and relax after meetings." She had a hard time meeting my gaze, so she just nodded and left for the bedroom. I couldn't tell if I'd given up something, or if she was just feeling guilty, and I didn't care which. I just wanted to get it over with. I thought about all the financial and other items and Wilson wanted me to provide by our next meeting to quickly facilitate the divorce. I required income and tax returns from both of us, as well as a list of assets and their value. She also asked me to list all of our responsibilities to Sasha and who handles them. Since our state is a community property state, it was clear that any property settlement would likely be 50-50ths. I liked the idea that we would just walk away from each other. She would keep hers, and I would keep mine. Since I was making more money, I was hoping the judge would rule that child support would balance out the alimony. I would keep my daughter, and Dana would get free visitation. She wouldn't have to pay child support, and I wouldn't, since the house we live in belongs to my parents. There is no way she could have gotten it. However, we would have to split the furniture and everything else. Again, I just wanted it to be over so I could move on. "Are you going to bed?" she asked after a while. "Maybe later," I said. "Luke, what's going on?" she asked. "For the last 2 days, you've been avoiding me. I want to know why. Did I do something to upset you? Dana, for the past 2 months, you've been distant and acting strange towards Sasha and me. Do you want to tell us why? What about your mood swings? We never know what kind of Dana will come home. Maybe we're just trying to give you some space to get your head out of your ass. I wasn't going to start this, but it all came out." I stood up and grabbed my car keys before I said something I later regretted. "Where are you going?" she asked. It seemed like she was about to cry. "I'm going to take a drive to calm down before things get out of hand," I said. "Do you want me to come with you? Maybe we could talk?" "No, there's no point in waking Sasha up because we won't get along," I said. "Or were you planning on leaving our daughter alone in the house while we were gone? Maybe you just forgot about her because I usually take care of her." Dana started to cry. She reached for me, and I pulled away from her. "Luke, I love you, and I love Sasha too, you know that," she said. "You have a funny way of showing it," I growled. "Close the door." Driving my Mustang at night has a magic of its own. The faces of the people on the street as I drove past them were funny to watch. They heard the car's engine a little before they saw it. They tended to stare at me long after I passed them. As I drove, I wondered what was going through Dana's mind. She had a husband and daughter who worshipped the ground she walked on. Why would she risk it all to have fun with some other guy? Our sex life up until 2 days ago wasn't bad. Even after 14 years, I wasn't huge either, but above average in size. I just couldn't figure out what was wrong. Maybe she was bored with what we were doing. Maybe I was just acting like a guy. Maybe it wasn't just about sex. I think guys have always assumed that if someone cheats, it has to do with sex. Maybe I did or didn't do something in a completely different area, but it had to be more than just sex or me because she treated Sasha differently too. I drove and wasted gas for about an hour before heading home. When I got there, all the lights were out, so I figured Dana was asleep. I took a quick shower and slid into bed. I intended to stay as far away from her as possible, at least until I found out if she was really cheating on me. During the trip, I was very productive. I came up with at least 5 or 6 reasons for her flighty behavior. She may have had a secret gambling addiction. One of the women who was friends with my mom went through this. She would sneak out of the house and go to the casino at least once or twice a week for several years before her husband found out. He never would have known about it if she hadn't messed up her affairs and started missing mortgage payments. When the mortgage company called him at work, all hell broke loose. But in the end, they helped her out and stayed together. The other possibility was that Dana was addicted to some kind of substance. Almost immediately after my head hit the pillow, she slid over to me. "I'm sorry," she said. "I've been stressed out at work lately. I guess I didn't realize it until you told me. Is there anything I can do to make you forgive me? Treat Sasha better?" I snapped back. "Well, now I was thinking of something a little more personal," she said as she stroked my stomach with her hands. When her fingers came close to my pubes, I grabbed her hand and pulled it away. "What happened?" she asked. I could tell she was in shock. In 14 years, I'd never been in a mood. "I need to get some sleep," I said. "I have a big day tomorrow, so I'm going to need all my strength." Then I rolled over and moved further away from her. "Good night, Dana," I said. The next morning, I felt great for some reason. I went through the files in our home office and made copies of all the tax documents and Wilson had requested. Within hours, Barracuda would have all the information needed for my divorce. Now all we needed was proof. I really hoped little Joe had something for me. Over the years, I've heard a few phrases from married and divorced couples that I always assumed to be true. One of them was the old chestnut about how love can't be turned off like a light switch. Unless you have never truly loved someone, now I truly believe that this is not true. I think it all depends on the situation and the people involved. In my case, up until 3 days before, I loved Dana with all my heart and soul. She is the mother of my daughter, and I really thought and hoped we would grow old together. But the realization that she had betrayed me just changed the way I felt about her. If she had cheated on me, we could still grow old, but not together. The second old tale was that a husband never knows when his wife is cheating. Guys are always painted as clueless unless the poor guy came home early and discovered the proverbial strange car in the driveway. He never found out. Sometimes the wife would come up with a clever lie and convince the guy that nothing was going on. Basically, the only way for the husband to find out was to catch them in the act. None of those scenarios described me. I needed to cut Dana out of my life, but it wasn't possible yet. She was Sasha's mother. For at least the next 8 years, we'd have custody issues. Then we'd both probably have to attend graduation parties and her wedding. Then there would be babies being born. Hopefully, in a few years, I'll find someone else and be done with her cheating. Maybe my skin will stop getting goosebumps at the sight of her too. At lunchtime, I faxed copies of the documents to Anne's office so she could get to work on the paperwork. After lunch, I felt like the day was dragging on. I kept remembering how much I loved Dana when we first started dating. I needed to pull myself together. My mood swings were just as bad as hers. I alternately hated her to the core and wished she didn't so we could stay together. I thought about marriage counseling. I thought about trying to forgive her and forget about it. These thoughts lasted for about a picosecond. There was no way I could forgive her if that was true. I also thought about the fact that it was my fault too. After all, I had fantasized about other women from time to time. All week, I'd even mentally fallen in love with Dana's new teacher. But there was a difference between thinking about someone in favorable terms and actually having fun with someone outside of marriage. Most guys are always looking at hot women and thinking about it. But when you actually do something about it, the line has already been crossed. Dana called me at work, but I didn't answer her call. She called my cell phone, but I didn't answer it either. She left me a message telling me how much she loved me and how we needed to talk. I deleted it after listening to it. I picked Sasha up from school at the usual time. She was excited about something, but I didn't remember what was supposed to happen that day. "Dad, are we going to eat first or go straight to the park?" Sasha asked. Who said we were going to the park today? I asked. Oh no, she said, you forgot, didn't you? You were supposed to be helping the track and field club today. We drove home, and I changed into a tracksuit. I decided that the volunteers and coaches would be dressed like that. I was about to leave when Sasha told me to get my iPad. I took it out and handed it to her. Thanks, Daddy, she said, that way I'll have something to do while I watch you watch people run. When we got to the park, I looked around to see where all the kids were. The park was shaped like a bowl, the parking lot was at the top, and to get to the trails and other activities the park offered, you had to walk down the slope past the unused tennis court. I saw a group of familiar faces, as well as a few parents. I saw a couple of children with whom Sasha occasionally socialized and their mothers or fathers. I walked over and joined the group. A few minutes later, I looked back up the hill and saw an SUV pull into the parking lot next to my Mustang. Gianna got out of it and was talking to Sasha as she walked down the hill. I noticed that she was also wearing a tracksuit. I think every father there swallowed amicably when she walked up and introduced herself. One guy, just seconds before, had been talking about how excited he would be when the teacher arrived and could leave. Sat down to watch. Inwardly, I laughed until I fell over. Apparently, it had the same effect on them as it had on me. Wait until they hear that voice and her accent. Gianna gathered all the kids and introduced me as her assistant or co-coach. She explained that this was just a cross-country running club, not an official team. For now, we would get together to run twice a week. But she told them that she expected them to run on their own as well. If all works out well, there will be tryouts for the cross-country team in the fall, and we will compete against other elementary schools. She told the parents that they could either stay or come back in an hour to pick up their kids. Most of them left before she got ready to go jogging. When she took off her gym pants and stood in shorts, all the men decided to stay. We gathered all the kids together, and after a short warm-up, we went for a slow group run on the trails. I took a position behind the group in case anyone got injured or couldn't keep up with the very slow pace we were running at. After a while, it became clear that all the kids were capable of running faster than we were running that day. Even the, fat kids were ahead of me. On the second lap, Gianna slowly came back to me. Hi, she said, smiling, are you okay? I nodded my head. That bad? She asked. I thought about it, and I guess I wanted to apologize to you. What do you need to apologize for? I asked. Well, I went over our conversation a few times in my head. I guess I was a little insensitive, she said. How are you supposed to know? I was stupid enough to believe my wife was on the PTA and never checked the meeting dates, I asked. It's not stupidity, she said, it's called trust. It's a good thing. It's the sign of a good person. If I'm a good person, why do I feel so bad? I asked her. It hurts a lot at first, she said, but then after a while, it gets worse. I smiled at her facial expression and tone. Some of the kids even noticed the sour note in her voice. Sounds like you've been there, I said. But I find that so hard to believe, because I'm pretty, she laughed. Her laugh was completely stupid. It started as a giggle and ended with a snort. My ex was so jealous of every man who even weeded me that I couldn't go anywhere or do anything. I really wish I had a man by my side who would give me the simple gift you give your wife, trust. It really means a lot. If you don't trust someone, how can you believe you love them? On the other hand, even though he didn't trust me as far as he could throw my car, he was the one who slept with me. My mouth dropped open. He was an explorer, so after he conquered me, he needed to seek out new conquests to keep from getting bored. He fought for a divorce until the last minute, but eventually, it was over, and I moved on with my life. That was 3 years ago, and now I am just at the point where I can tolerate men around me. Then I'll try my best not to act like a man, I said. Damn men, I hate them all, she smiled. I don't hate men, she smiled, it's just that I've been through a lot of bitterness and self-pity. Where I come from, if you can't make your man happy, you're just not much of a woman. You look a lot like a woman, I said. I muttered the whole time we were running together. I had a hard time taking my eyes off her ass. Her legs also seemed incredibly long and sensual. Noticed, huh? She smiled. Her smile told me a lot of things. For one thing, she definitely interested me on some level. She also let me know that she knew the effect she had on men and didn't mind bragging about it and flirting a little. After the second lap, we took the kids back to the clearing where we started the race. We had them do some stretching exercises, told them how great they did, and sent them home with their parents. Several parents came up to us to ask questions. Most of them wanted to know how I became her assistant and if there were still openings. As we were walking back to the parking lot after the last kid left, Sasha jumped out of the car. "Daddy, can we go to Pizza Hut?" she asked. "I guess so," I smiled. "Okay," she said, "this is Miss Marshall's favorite restaurant." "So, Miss Marshall, since this is your favorite restaurant," I hinted. "Well, Mr. McCain, I'd love to join you, but why don't we do it in 45 minutes? That way, the two of us can shower and change. You have to be comfortable to eat pizza," she laughed. "Okay, see you later," Sasha said. "Come on, Dad, you need to take a shower." 45 minutes later, Sasha and I got out of the Mustang in front of the only Pizza Hut in town. We walked inside and took a table. We were looking over the menu when Gianna appeared, and all the guys in the place turned to look at her. She smiled at me, and I could feel it across the room. I could also feel the stares of all the guys present. It got me thinking about what it would be like to be in a relationship with someone like that. How would you deal with all the guys constantly hitting on her? I acted like a gentleman and pulled out a chair for her from behind the table. We had a great time and ate a lot of pizza. Sasha spent some time playing video games, so Gi and I had time to talk. It was a magical night. Gianna asked me how things were going in my marriage, and I brought her up to speed. She shook her head and said that things would get much worse before they got better. "Wait until you're in a lawyer's office and you're arguing over a coffee table that neither of you wants," she said. "You'll just get to the point where you don't want to give that person a single thing more than they've already taken from you." "Sorry, this must be a terrible first date for you," she smiled. "Is it a date?" said I. I wasn't sure I was ready for a date yet. What if I found out that Dana wasn't cheating on me? What if it was just a gamble? Then the cheater would turn out to be me, wouldn't it? I knew I should say something to her about it, but damn it, I didn't. I just let the night go the way it went. Sasha was so tired from playing video games and hanging out with the kids at Pizza Hut that I had to carry her into the house and put her to bed. We walked around a lot longer than I had planned, mostly because Gi was so easy to talk to. She was like a wind-up toy. All you had to do was wind her up and watch her work, and she would tell you anything you wanted to know about anything. I got into bed and tried not to wake Dana, but she rolled over and hugged me as soon as I was in bed. "Where did you guys go?" she asked. "Pizza Hut," I replied. "I wondered why your iPad wasn't on the table." "Sasha was playing with her friends and eating pizza while you were on the internet looking for C parts, right? You're a good dad, honey, and a great husband." "I'm sorry for the way I acted," she said. "I love you, Luke. Can we start having sex already?" She came to bed determined to give me a few sloppy seconds of some bastardization. There was no way I was going to entertain her until I knew if she was cheating on me or not. "Not today," I said, leaving her even more shocked than the night before. "I think I have a cold, and I don't want to pass that on to you." I wished I could read Dana's mind as she sat there looking at me. Did she really think I knew what was going on, or did she think I was still stupid? I left quickly again the next morning, waking Sasha up and asking her not to tell her mom about the night before. She hardly ever talks to me anyway, Daddy, so why should this morning be any different? Sasha said. A couple of hours later, I was sitting at my desk, deep in thought as usual when a package was delivered to me via messenger. I signed for it and opened it. The envelope contained 2 floppy disks and a stack of papers. I inserted one disk into the computer and started it up. There were 4 files on the disk. I started the one with the previous Wednesday's date on it. It showed Dana walking into a cheap motel with a very tall guy. I could barely make out who he was. Then, in the room, I saw them getting close. It was Chuck Connor, the guy she worked with. I watched long enough to make sure they weren't playing cards, then I turned off the disc. I think some guys would want to watch it in its entirety. Even sicker guys would probably want to watch it multiple times and maybe even jerk off to it. And I just felt like throwing up. Gee, I was right, of course. As bad as it was to think about her cheating on me, it was much worse to see it, especially when I saw some of the things she'd let him do to her that she'd never let me think about. I made a copy of the DVD to send to Ann. Then I copied the disc of phone conversations and sent a copy of both discs and the paperwork detailing who Chuck Connor was when they got together and other information. I called Ponderosa Investigations and thanked them for a job well done. I also declined their services because they were no longer needed and were expensive. And called me a few hours later. She said everything was ready, the paperwork was ready, she just needed Chuck's name so I could sue him too. In our state, you couldn't sue for alienation of affection or anything like that. I sued him for mental anguish, for the stress he helped my daughter and I go through because of his affair with Dana, and told me that there was a very real possibility that we wouldn't get a dime from Chuck. We sued him so that his wife and family would find out what he had done and basically ruin his life. If we had sued the company they worked for, they both probably would have been fired. And since the lawsuit against him was in the public domain, anyone who decided to hire him in the future and did a background check could have stumbled across it. It was a nice touch. And was clearly worth every dime she charged me. She also explained to me that unlike what was shown on TV, we were not going to roll out all of our ammunition together. That would have been stupid. First, we filed for divorce. After the settlement agreement was signed and approved by a judge, then we sued Chuck and the company. That way, at the time the judge approved, Dana would have her own income so the settlement agreement would be relatively fair. Then, after the judge approved it, we sued Chuck and the company. Since Dana would have lost her job after the settlement was approved, we would not have been at fault for leaving her destitute. And also told me that I should listen to the audio conversations on the second disc if I hadn't already because Dana was thinking about ending the relationship between her and Chuck and wanted to know if there was a difference for me, and I told her no. I told her I needed a day or two to figure out how and when I wanted to serve the papers. She decided that we should do it at Dana's work. The embarrassment and humiliation she would cause if she did it there was excellent. It would also serve as a notice to the upper management of the company that problems were brewing. I hung up the phone, and although I guessed I should be happy, a smile was the furthest thing from my mind. I don't know how I made it through the whole weekend. Saturday, I took Sasha and a couple of her friends to the zoo. Sunday, I washed and polished the car again. On Monday, I couldn't sit through another day of work, so I called in sick and took my Mustang to the shop to have a chin spoiler installed. The instructions said it was easy and anyone could do it, but I didn't want to take a chance in my condition and ruin the car. While I waited for the technicians to install it, I called and told her that Dana could be served on Wednesday. As soon as I hung up, it rang again. Dana's number came up on the caller ID. "Why aren't you at work?" she asked. "I'm still not feeling very good, so I decided to work on the car a little bit," I said. "Why didn't you at least tell me so I'd know where you were and not look stupid calling your office?" she asked. "We're supposed to be married, you know." "Sometimes I can't tell," I said slowly. "Luke, you know. I love you," she said, "and I know it was my fault that this happened, but I don't know how to fix it without making it worse. Can't we just promise each other to never let work stress get in the way of our family ever again?"